is language, and why language is so important. If you all can think back, you remember when you had this circle and you had what life is like in poverty, and you talked about all the different barriers and how education was one of those barriers that was up there? What I want to talk to you about is why language is so important to learning, and why when you all come on Thursday nights, why that is so important. Because I know for a lot of you all, you're at different points. You don't have children at this particular point, you're not necessarily living in poverty, but you're sitting there engaging in with people. And it's all about language. Because for a lot of the people who are there, when we start to figure out how many words people actually have in their vocabulary, when we look at people in generational poverty, there's a discrepancy there. And we've got to help kind of grow that. And so we're going to talk about why it's so important to connect with people, why going around the room and doing new and goods is so very important, and it's really to enhance language skills. It's really to be able to learn how to have conversations. It's learning how to have a beginning and a middle and an end to things. And when we look at educational opportunities, language is the leading cause behind a lot of things that help drive people to be able to move forward. In your book, you all talked about frozen language, the 5 different types. Have you all talked about that? Okay, good. Because one of the things
they listened, I can't believe it.
They did, that's great. So when we start to talk about frozen and formal and casual and looking at the intimate language, when you go into Thursday nights, what register do you think you often see going on? Casual, yeah. It's very, very casual. They're very, very comfortable. If you're living in generational poverty, which is the #1 type of form of register that you use? Casual. So what happens if you have grown up in casual register and you're not familiar with frozen, you're not going to church, you're not hearing certain types of prayers, things like that. You're not exposed to formal registers. You don't have parents that are CEOs or corporations or anything like that or working in the workforce. They're just minimum wage, working out blue-collar jobs, as we call it, or white-collar jobs, but in this situation it's blue-collar. What happens when you come from the casual register and you're going into an environment that's very formal?
Well,
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, like you're moving from casual to formal, like it'd be like an older culture kind of. Like you have to adapt, and if you were, you'd be able to adapt to the sophisticated word choice, and all that good stuff. To not get used to, hello sir, how are you? Hey, what's up?
Very good. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're not used to that and you've never practiced that, do you think there's some anxiety when you get put into those types of situations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like going to an interview or something.
Yeah. It can be very, very terrifying. If you're not comfortable with formal register and you go into a situation where formal register is what's expected of you and you only know how to speak casually, you'll see that either people will shut down or they'll inappropriately misspeak and miscommunicate. And that's often what happens. And then people will often judge people based off of that, not realizing that really what it is that they're coming from a very casual register. They haven't been given the opportunity to really practice a formal register. So during that Thursday evenings, you're going to see me at times speak very casually. I'm going to join them right where they're at. Join people, and I always do that. I join people where they're very comfortable at. If it's formal, that's where I will be at. If it's casual, that's where I will go. But I will take a minute every now and then to slip into that formal role and practice that and really kind of respond to that. A lot of times I will do certain things just for a reason, to help people feel very, very comfortable. We're going to talk about circular motion. Have you all started talking about that? Talking in circular motion? This is really great. Let's see if I can get into a slide here. Here we go. In formal register, when we go in and we communicate, we really get right down to the point, right? It's very, very straight to the point. In casual register, what you will often have in people in generational poverty is that they will actually talk in a circular motion. So I will ask a question, how was your day? And the next thing you know, it's going to go off into about 10 other things, and really I would expect just to find it was great. But they're going to go off in about 10 things, and 10 minutes later we're finally going to answer the question, after we've gone on to probably 10 different types of discussions. Have you ever met anyone like that?
I'm like that.
Are you like that? It's very, yeah. I have a family that I grew up in, my mother, and a lot of people know this. I have a father who came from wealth and a mother who came from poverty. This is a very difficult household to grow up in. Can you imagine the kind of conflict they have? Because my dad very much used formal register and casual register, but very, very professional. Fell in love with his high school sweetheart, my mother, who very much grew up in a casual register. And so when I'm with her 7 other sisters, which I was just here recently at a Women's of Faith conference, and I thought, oh my goodness, this almost wore me out. Because in order to communicate, you have to jump in. You have to literally interject yourself. When you're raised in generational poverty and you're raised in casual register, and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, because I will tell you, your greatest comedians come from poverty, by the way. Your greatest comedians. And the most fun I've ever had will be sitting around with people that speak in a very casual register and speak in circular motion, and they love to interject. It's lively, it's part of storytelling, it's always exciting and fun. There's never a dull moment. You will not get that at the country club. Okay? You're not going to get that same type of great, awesome experience, laughing till your sides absolutely ache. So when I say this, I'm saying this with the utmost appreciation. If you grew up in a family that had circular motion, I too grew up with that as well. And I learned how to navigate both because my father and his family were one way, my mother and her family was another. And so while I'm down there, they're talking. But I'll often do this when we're on Thursday evenings, when all of a sudden someone will interject and say something when I'm in midstream of a sentence. And I'll sit back and not really say anything, let them go ahead and talk. Then when they start to speak to something, I'll interject all of a sudden, and I'll take a step back and say, oh, I am so sorry. That was so rude of me. I really apologize. I wish I wouldn't have done that. I want to hear what you have to say. You're like, oh no, just jump on in there. Feel free to say whatever you want to say. No. I really want to hear what you have to say. Why do you think I do that?
So they won't do it next time?
I'm modeling it. I'm making it okay that it's all right to interject, but I'm also modeling that if you ever want to go into a job, into a workforce, do you know what happens when you're in a formal environment and you interject when someone's talking? What do they think of you?
That you're disrespectful.
Being disrespectful. You're being rude. Yeah. And a lot of really qualified people who are really good in their profession, but because they talk in circular motion, they get passed over time and time and time again for certain jobs, for upper management positions, for promotions, because they speak in a circular arrangement, because they simply just didn't know what those hidden rules are and how to navigate that. And so my job is to go in there and to practice that, because in 2 or 3 weeks, that individual all of a sudden will jump in and when in the middle of I'm saying something, and then all of a sudden go, oh, Gina, I'm so sorry. That was so rude of me. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish up. And you know what that's letting me know? They're learning how to move into the formal register. Now, why talking in circular motion can this cause a problem with education? Does anyone know? How many of you read Goldilocks and the Three Little Bears? Everyone here? Okay, so let's talk about Goldilocks. The first thing she does, she comes into the house. What's the first thing she experiences? What are the things that she does? Does anyone remember?
She eats the food.
Okay, so the porridge, the first porridge, this porridge is too hot. This porridge is too cold. But this porridge is just right. It's just right. What about the chair?
She fell asleep.
That's the bed. You're getting close.
Oh,
She tries out the chairs, and the first chair, this chair is too
Big.
big. The second chair is too
broke.
small. And broke. Yeah. And then the third chair is just right. And then we go on to the bed. And the first bed is too,
Too hard.
yeah, we're going to have to reread Goldilocks, aren't we? I challenge you guys to do that. The first bed is too hard. The second bed is too soft. And the third bed is just right. Yeah. The thing is that if you've grown up in a family where circular motion is being discussed, what happens is that there's generally not a beginning and a middle and an end. And in every book that you read, there should typically be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so when we go to relay and we answer questions, we think about that. And that's why repetition in children's books is so very, very important. And we really encourage parents to read to their children, not just to increase their children's vocabulary, But in their brain, they're remapping their own brain. Getting away from that circular motion, getting into a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so we're introducing elementary books back into the lives, and we're using it through their children, but what it's doing to remap the adult's brain is unbelievable. It's those type of skill sets that are going to help them be able to go on, develop a future story. If you do not have a beginning and a middle and an end, if you can't look at your life and see the past and how you got where you're at today and have a vision for the future, how are you going to move forward? And when people talk in circular motion and they don't learn that beginning and middle, they get caught in what you all have learned about. It's called the tyranny of the moment. So if we're going to help move people out of poverty, helping them become self-sufficient, then we have to help them start learning the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now, how this impacts learning, and this is unbelievable, is when you start to look at the discourse pattern, when people are talking and telling you a story and then everybody's interjecting in, you actually take that information in bits and pieces, which is really hard for you to get that information into long-term storage. You probably can in short term, but you're not going to remember a lot of details either. But because your brain's coming in and the way that everyone around you communicates, what happens is your brain really gets programmed to take that information in bits and pieces. And then when someone comes in and tells you something in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end, you kind of doze off for a little bit. They're kind of boring to you because you didn't put it in the way that my brain knows how to register, which is in bits and pieces like that. So for children who are raised in this kind of environment, going to school becomes very, very difficult for them. It can be very, very challenging. And why some kids do better than others and some do not. And a lot of times we can take a look right back here and see this discourse pattern, see how things are being discussed at home. Have you ever heard someone, when they get into a fight, the teacher says, you need to use your words, right? You need to use your words. Well, in your book, you're going to have a chart there. And can, what page is that? Does anyone have their investigations book? Does anyone have it?
I know about the one that we showed previously.
Yes.
110.
Okay, 110. So we had Hart and Risley, who did a study in 1995. I had looked at this study quite a bit in detail when I started looking at what skill sets we were going to have to implement into our program designed to help people become self-sufficient. Language was a big part of that. And what they ended up doing, and I think was very, very clever, is they actually took families that were all completely stable. So we're not talking about taking families that have suffered from abuse or anything like that. These are families across the board that the only thing that separates them is a dollar figure in income. And these are families that have children 1 to 3 years of age.
This page?
That's it. What
Okay,
page is
it's
that?
121.
121. So look at there at the very beginning, and I want you to look at how many words someone in wealth has. How many words is that?
Someone in well past.
Yeah, how many words a child will expect to learn in wealth?
45 million.
How many?
45 million.
45 million words. How about somebody in middle class, just a professional?
26 million.
26 million. Now take someone who's living in welfare and generational poverty.
13.
13 million. 13 million. There's a big discrepancy. So 13 million at the very bottom. What's the very top? 45 million. So when a teacher goes and tells a student all of a sudden, I need you to use your words. What words? I haven't been taught the words that you're talking about. I don't have a formal register to apply that. Because the only way I know how to do is in bits and pieces and choppy fragment sentences, and I speak in circular motion. So I do not really get what you're saying when you say, do not use my hands, but use my words. So when we look at effective discipline techniques, I look at those teachers who have done some amazing things. How many of you have ever heard of Dr. Gary Quinn? He's the superintendent of the Barnesville Public Schools. Yes, he has a wife, Julia Quinn. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful woman, let me just tell you. And my daughter, 17 now, was in the 4th grade. She had Julia Quinn as a teacher. And there was something that happened there that year as a parent that I got to sit back and watch this particular teacher did that I have never seen done before. And it is the same type of thing that I brought into building bridges, because it was unbelievable. Julie is one of the most fascinating, I think, teachers we have, very, very gifted. So when you know you have a problem student coming into that grade, guess who's going to get that teacher? Julie is. One of many. She's very, very gifted. And because we know this is a problematic student, we want to make sure we give the best of the best to be able to handle the student who's technically known as a discipline problem. So what Julia started to do is she would have, once a week, she would have all the students go to the cafeteria, get their lunches, and bring them back into the room. And she sat in a circle. And you know what she did? She talked. That was it. That was all she did. She took her lunch period, which was not something that was part of her prerequisite. She could have that hour off to herself to rejuvenate, and I guarantee you she needed that hour to rejuvenate. But she also knew if she went in and started connecting with these individuals, connected with each and every student, and got them connecting with each other, that the discipline problem would go down. Julia Quinn never has discipline problems in her classroom because she took the time to use words. She took the time when they got into a fight to say, I tell you what, let's all get our lunches here together and let's talk together as a group and how we can use our words. And so everyone starts throwing out these ideas of this is how I do it, this is what I do, this is what worked for me, this is what didn't work for me. And the next thing you know, that student is learning what? Words. And is learning it in a way that he can understand or she can understand how to apply it. So the next time when Julia says you need to use your words, she's not only telling you that, she's going to back it up by taking the moment to bring everyone together. And we're going to help one another learn how to develop those words and use those words. That was life-changing for me, that little classroom experience. To this day, my daughter has a group of friends, they're a very, very core group of friends that she has just bonded with, and it was from that 4th grade class. They are still friends today because of that. Daring to do something different. So when you're out there on Thursday evenings, sometimes it doesn't always make sense, but a lot of times it's all about learning how to do formal register, giving some time to be able to get in there and just sit and talk. Because if you only have how many words if you're generational? How many words? 13 million words. And you eventually one day want to make more than $7.25 an hour. One day you want to move up in those promotions. What is the first thing you're going to have to learn to do? What are some things you're going to have to do? You want to be looked at in a promotion. What are some skill sets you need to have? Does anyone know? Anyone want to take a guess?
Know how to talk to people.
You're going to need to know how to talk to people. You're going to need to know how to communicate with one another. You're going to need to know how to relate to one another. You're going to need to know how to move from formal register to casual register and back to formal register. And anytime you look at anybody who's in a high management position or in a teaching position or a facilitating position, I guarantee you they have the skill sets to move from casual register to formal register, to casual register, formal register. They've learned how to communicate and meet people where they're at, but they also know how to model how to do that formal register. And to do it in a way that makes people want to adopt it without them even knowing they need to adopt it. So I encourage you this week when you're out there walking around Walmart, walking around campus, or if you're coming, we're closed here, but next week we'll be back open and building bridges, watch how people talk and see what register they do. What exactly do they put in place? And what can you do to help someone move from the casual register to the formal register? How many of you feel pretty comfortable that you can go between the two in this room? Kind of, it looks like about 50-50. Yeah. Think so? Do you think it just happened for me? It didn't. I'm going to tell you that right now. I grew up in it, and it was a very confusing world. And no one came up to me and said, by the way, your father's family is all formal register and your mother's family is all casual. So that'll help you figure all this out. and this is what you need to do. Instead, I had to navigate through lots of arguments and discussions that took place because one spoke one way and one spoke the other, so you can imagine they had a communication problem. But what was so neat is when we start to teach people about the language registers, how a lot of the conflict that we have between one another goes away. Because then we start to understand where people start to come from, that they have where they're at in their skill set, and what we can do to help someone else out. That takes a lot of the frustration away. So my parents were very fortunate. I was down in Dallas, Texas one time doing a Bridges Out of Poverty training. We're talking about this very thing, and they were just sitting in because they just wanted to see their daughter, which in itself is pretty monumental because they see me all the time, and I'm nothing that special to them. However, they wanted to see me. They wanted to see me talk about that. And so they got out of there. They were like, honey, you get it? This is why we argue all the time. They got it. And they'll talk about how that was kind of that crossroads in their marriage where they started to realize they were coming back together because they learned how to accept where the other grew up, how to start communicating with each other, using their words effectively, and understanding the hidden rules between different economic classes. They have a beautiful, beautiful marriage. They are excellent, excellent grandparents, excellent parents in my life, but they wish they could have had that information when they first got married. And so they're the first to go in there and tell everybody, you need to learn about this. And that's one of the reasons why we're here, is because we want you to go into your relationships, into your life, into the workforce, knowing how to communicate effectively, giving you the best chance of not only having healthy relationships, but the best chance to get promotions. The best chance to be the best you can be in your career and in your profession, in your community, in your life, in your children's life, in your family's life. That be all you can be, this is where it starts, right here. It's learning how to communicate with one another. If you take nothing else out of this module, I'm going to encourage you to take time to really listen to people and think about where they're at. Are they in a casual register or are they in a formal register? Do they talk in a circular motion or are they straight to the point? Figuring that out will help you communicate with them. Join them where they're at and then help them increase. Model it. But join them where they're at. Instead of making fun of it, join them right where they're at. Okay, you all have any questions about that module? Any questions at all? Does that make sense to you all when you're up there on Thursday evenings? Can you see some of that playing out? Do you all know why we have circle tables at dinner? We actually had to look for a group to have circular tables. Can you all guess why we do that?
So you're looking at each other?
You're looking at each other, yeah. Yeah. How many of you have a square dining room table that you grew up in? I did. And who sits at both ends?
Mom.
Mom and Dad, right? Mom on one end, Dad on the other. Is that, or at least is Dad at the head of that table?
I'm at one end.
You're at one end? Wow. Congratulations. That's good. So everyone has kind of a defined spot that they're in. But a lot of times that dynamics is set up for a reason. If you look at old time movies or anything like that, there's a square table and you got Mom at one end and Dad at the other, and there's a reason for that. But one of the things that we had to do is start leveling the playing field. Because there is no head of this table or head of the household. We're all in it together. We're all going to learn from each other. So I'm not actually an expert in generational poverty. A lot of people think I am, but I'm not. The experts are sitting there in the program who teach me every Thursday evening what I really am missing and help me figure out solutions. So they're actually very key to my education and to my growth and into my career. I learn from them. I'm good at what I do because I know that they will help me figure out the answers. It wasn't that I was so great, just that I took the time to listen. And I took the time to appreciate them and realize that these individuals have the answers that I've been looking for. And that I get to be a part of this process as well. So we have circles so we can level the playing field. So everyone can talk to one another, everyone can communicate regardless of age, race, gender, ethnicity, any of that. We're all on the same level playing field. So when you guys get there, think about that at dinner time. Dare to be a little bold and go in there and talk to someone. Because when you do, you're going to be enhancing their language skills. You're going to be giving them words. You're going to be helping them begin a beginning, a middle, and an end. You talking about your own story, where you grew up, how you got to Oklahoma Wesleyan. All of that helps them learn how to communicate, how to have casual conversation in a more formal way that'll help them in their workforce. And will help you too. Any questions? You guys did great. Anything else, Professor View, that you want to have focus in on?
I'm good.
How are we on time?
Well, we've got plenty of time. We don't get out till 20 after.
So what
And
time is it?
It's 20 till.
Oh, well, we are really doing good.
You want to do chapter 7 too?
Yeah, what's chapter 7?
11 resources.
11 resources. Okay, let's turn to chapter 7, 11 resources, because this is a very, very important one. I'll do it my way. Is that all right?
That's the way I love it.
Okay, that's what
You're
I'll
where
do.
it's at. I'm down with that.
You're down with that. And I use that more now than I've ever used it before in my life since I made it, started focusing in on it. Okay, 11 resources. One of the things that we started to look at, and why it's so very important for you to look at this, because these 11 resources are for you. Learning how to look at where your resources at, where you're strong in certain areas and where you're weak in other areas, is going to help you have a better quality of life. So let me explain to you a little bit about what I mean. So when we started looking at people in an adult world who started to have signs of depression, for you psychology majors, who have anxiety disorders, who suffer from all sorts of mental health issues, we started to look at what truly resources do they need to overall feel well. When I started to find people that were going through financial difficulties and really getting to the heart of it, it really wasn't so much about budgeting as it was when we went to analyze their entire life, that there were other areas that were impacting it. So, if you're emotionally not doing well, how can this impact your finances? And this is where I need you.
You want to get things that'll make you feel better?
Yes. So you'll buy. And sometimes people will do that, but all of a sudden have an addiction to shopping, right? That impulsivity, needing to feel better, so I buy something and now I feel a lot better. Yeah. So that definitely affects your budget health.
Remember that energy?
What is it?
Remember that energy?
Yes. You get so depressed. When you get depressed, you get sleepy, right? When you get tired. How many of you have ever felt run down and depressed? I mean, you get long periods of rain. We've had that for days and months on end here in Burtonsville, and you can see people, it starts to affect. And you see people getting more and more tired and sleepy and getting more and more worn out. So how can that impact your finances? You start missing work. Start showing up late for work, right?
You're tired.
Because you're too tired. How many of you are tired right now when it gets into finals week? How many feel like that's all you are, is tired all the time? Yeah.
That's all I get. I
Yeah.
have people other doing it, and I'm like, oh, I'm tired.
That's exactly it. Does anyone say, man, I woke up feeling energetic today? Woo! Yes! Energetic! That's how I feel.
All people do.
Okay. Would you like to know the secret of how to become energetic in your college years? I'm letting you in on a secret. Yeah. Learning how to balance out your life right now and learning how to prioritize certain things will go a long ways in you getting your energy back. And that is something that is taught. That is not something that's just in us all the time. I just want to let you know that. And I wish I could go back and relive my college years. People ask how I get everything done all the time and I seem so energetic. If you see me on a day that I'm not energetic, the first thing I have to do is look at all of my different resources and feel like, what in the world is going on? Why do I feel off balance? So what we start to do is we look at financial, which financial is being able to purchase the goods and services of that class and sustain it. So if I'm someone in generational poverty, then finances, for me to be strong in finances, that means I can at least get what I need I have basic food, I have basic things that I need to be able to sustain that. What we usually do is have people rate each one of these resources on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being very, very low. I'm not very good at this at all. Right now, my financial resource, I am in the hole, I'm upside down, I owe more than I have more going out than I have coming in. This means I am very, very low. 5 being, I'm doing great. I actually have everything I have, I'm able to put back. I'm financially sound. That's not one of my issues right now. So we have people start to rate that. The next one is emotional. We already talked about that, how emotional sometimes can impact the financial. So if we don't take a minute and realize that emotionally we are exhausted, what's going to happen to your grades? Yeah. And then you've got to start making up assignments because you're getting at the close and you're already tired already going into that and you're behind on assignments. How are you as far as attendance in class? On a rainy day when you're really, really tired and oh my goodness, you for some crazy reason pick an 8 in the morning class and you don't know why. Why did I do that to myself? Yeah. It can affect your grades. It can affect your attendance. So looking at your emotional and looking at what can I do to recharge that will help you all the way around in your overall goals. Mental. How can your mental state affect you?
Oh, I don't feel like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really care. Having the mental abilities and acquired skills, reading, writing, computing, to deal with daily life. In this situation, most of you have the skill sets, the basic skill sets to be successful in school, but you're learning things that are to a whole nother level, isn't it? And so the ability to connect with one another, the ability to when you're struggling, and let's say, and I think about my son who said trig is just not his thing. He's doing well this semester except for trig. And so when we looked at mental, what can you do to help encourage that? What can you do to help raise if you're rating yourself 1 in your trig class? And it's really, there's some things there I'm just not getting. I don't understand why I can't get it and everyone else can. What do you think he should do? What would be some advice you would give him? What would we tell a student who is suffering in trig on a college campus?
Tutoring.
Tutoring, yeah. Would you reach out to someone else in the classroom who's doing well? Well, my first thing is someone's setting the curve, I'd probably contact you. Yeah, if I didn't, have animosity toward you sitting so high. Yeah, yes, which is good, that's a good thing. You would reach out to people and you hope that because he's emotionally stable enough in his confidence level and everything else that he would mentally be able to reach out and connect and be able to get the very skill sets that he needs to be able to do that. For people in generational poverty, we have to look at that because some of these basic skill sets, because we just learned about language and about discourse patterns and how it interrupts the brain flow and how it interrupts memory and long-term memory, we have to look at basic certain skill sets to be able to do that. And so sometimes we have to go back into what are those soft skills that we have to teach. And that's one of the things why we have a programmatic piece called Building Bridges. Spiritual, believing in divine purpose and guidance. Why is spiritual a resource? Why is it up there?
Because, us going here on the West End, most of not all of us have this. Like, we're really big on our spiritual life. That's why it's multiple.
Yeah, yeah. So why is that important for people in generational poverty?
Because it helps them get through the day, like helps them stay positive, and just motivates them to keep not giving up.
Yes. When you look at hope, and when things seem really, really dark, going back in your spiritual, that ability to know that you can make it out to the other side, that you don't have to walk this journey by yourself, and knowing your own foundation and having one. Can having a strong spiritual, will that help your energy?
Yeah.
How many of you go to chapel and actually get energized sometimes? Yeah, yeah. For a lot of people, going to church or going into another group or talking to someone else that has the same faith as you can actually energize you in ways that nothing else can. And so for a lot of times, looking at the spiritual and that ability to hope, know that it's okay, that right attitude can help with the mental and the emotional. Spiritual also has another thing that's really great behind that. Because when you get a room full of people who are just like you, who are learning how to praise God or praise and have hope and the ability that they can do things, they start to network with one another. Language skills start to get developed because now you're introducing more of a formal register into the life as well. And so looking for a lot of people in generational poverty, this has been their missing piece. Do you know what the number one reason why people in generational poverty, they say, keeps them from going to church? Does anyone know? This was fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating.
They feel like they're too broken to be in church.
Yeah, a lot do. That was one of them. Wasn't the number one, but it was high up there. You're absolutely right. They felt too broken. They weren't worthy. Didn't feel comfortable was another. It was too formal. The atmosphere was just too formal for a lot. The number one reason was financial, tithing. They were scared to death because they couldn't even make ends meet. They had more going out than coming in and didn't realize that what they could do is a transition and all that. So they literally are spiritually deprived during this time because they didn't realize that there's other ways that they can give until their budget gets back in line. That there's other things that they can do to tithe of their time because time is money as well. And so they literally deprive themselves of sometimes the very most key fundamental resource in their life that's going to help stabilize them out emotionally, mentally, and financially. They deprive themselves of that very thing because of some of those very reasons that you guys just listed. So spiritual is definitely a resource that we have to look at. And so when you look at your own life, a lot of times when all of a sudden things start to, you're going through depression and you're going through all these other things, a lot of times we don't take the time and say, how is my relationship with God? How is my relationship with myself? How is my attitude? On a scale of 1 to 5, where would I put me in spiritual? And a lot of times, in lies the answer right there that can help get you out of those deepest, darkest moments. Spiritual. That's why we keep it up there. How can physical affect the finances? And why is it a resource?
You're not because of the health, you can't go work.
That's exactly right. That's exactly it. If you do not have good health, then it's hard for you to go to work. There's a lot of jobs that you might not be able to do because of that.